Pat, thanks for coming on the program tonight.
No, thanks for having me.
As always. All right. So let's just give you a little bit of a platform here to start this interview off with. Just kind of give us the state of the Dynamo currently.
Yeah, well, the state is we're not where we want to be. That's for sure. We stated from the get-go we wanted to be a playoff team. Believe we're 6 points off now. 12 games to go. We're going to have to go on a massive run to make the playoffs. It's going to be very, very difficult. But the thing is I would look in the mirror, and first and foremost, I think we're to blame. Like we are where we are. That's the team we have right now. We're not a playoff team at this point in time. Could have changed. Yeah, we hope so. But I think certainly don't feel hard done by anywhere in this league. You make your own luck. You make your own record, and our record, I think, speaks volumes about who we are as a club, and we've still got a lot of work to do.
Dynamo General Manager Pat Onstead joining us here tonight. I know you don't like to get into what happened in the past, but as I look at this roster and I see what you inherited, there are consequences, decisions, and things that have occurred in the past with this club. And I'll say this from me, this isn't you. I'll say this from me, that there were non-soccer people making soccer decisions that have made this a challenge for you. All right, so now we hear Nelson Quinones. We're getting a rumor out there. There's a lot of people hot on this 19-year-old Colombian winger. What can you tell us about it?
I don't know who you're talking about. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think we're very close to bringing. What I will say is we're very, very close to bringing someone in that rhymes very, very, very closely to Nelson Quinones. So, but what I would say is we don't want to get ahead of ourselves until all the ink is dried, so to speak. But I think we've done a good job of recognizing some talent down in Colombia that we've gone after. This has been an interesting window because we've made a pretty hard push to try to bring a couple of guys in. I think first and foremost in this window, and everyone kind of forgets because he was announced back in February, March,
Hector.
April. But Hector's still, I would argue, is him and Insigne are probably the two biggest signings that we've had in the league in this window. And I would argue, Hector in our market certainly is a bigger splash. So that's a big one for us. And then obviously, assuming we can get this rumored guy across the line and complete it, and I think in the next 24 hours we'll have an announcement on that. That would be nice for us. It'd be a good move. During the season, it's difficult to move in league. And you notice that, I think, when you look, it's all out of league coming in, and a lot of that has to do with if you're trading a guy in league, someone else has to acquire their full salary cap charge. It becomes very difficult to move guys just because people don't have room on their cap. Now in the off season, things are a little bit more fluid. There's a lot more room. You're kind of playing with a blanker canvas, so to speak, in terms of what you're committed to and not committed to, and teams already have their eyes on certain players. So. I think for us, we're not where we want to be, so we're always looking to try to improve our squad, and we'll do that until this window closes.
All right, Nelson Quinones from Onstead. Now, I noticed he's from Tumaco, Colombia, which is where Darwin Quintero's from. Did you talk to Darwin about anything in Colombia, the players' negotiation?
If we were talking about a Colombian player and we were close, then we might do due diligence to talk to a former Colombian if we were looking at a Colombian player.
Got it. All right. Let's continue on here because it is well documented. You guys need an international spot. If in fact this so-called player needs an international spot, how do you do that? I've also heard a rumor that Matias Vera might get his green card. How does all this work?
Well, I can nip the green card one right now. There's a new rule this year that if you don't have a green card by the close of the first transfer window, actually, I take that back. By the time the first roster freeze back in when you have to submit your roster back in February, then therefore you cannot get your green card. That won't count. Even if we will obtain some green cards this year throughout the rest of the calendar year, but they will not be available until next year for the international slot. So, in terms of Mateus, there's a few guys that are close. Mateus probably being the closest, but that won't affect this decision. So we'll have to either go obtain one. Or we'll have to do some manipulating within. One option we've had is you can loan an international down for the season to the second team, and there's some pretty strict rules how that takes place. They have to be on the roster. They have to, play in those games. So it's not like you can just blanketly, he's training with the first team and we'll loan him down. And I think we've done that in this case already with Thiago. So it's possible we could do that again with another one. But we'll see how this plays out in the next couple of weeks.
Pat Onstead, Dynamo general manager. This player that you're looking at now, if in fact it is the one that everybody's bannering around, 19-year-old Nelson Quinones.
Yeah.
Is this a player you're bringing for immediate impact, or is this a project because he is 19 years old?
Yeah, he's young, but I think he brings this player that if we happen to get this player, and I know the one you're talking about, so I've seen him. So, but what I would say is he's that player who's under contract with another team, but that player is a good one-on-one player. It's pretty dynamic. He's got some pace. He brings something that we don't necessarily have on our roster at this moment that's consistently being able to do that. So he is young. So we know it's not necessarily a fix that comes in and we expect him to go and light the world on fire. But at the same token, we would, players like that are players that we look at for long-term and guys that we hope can make the jump here.
Matt, do you need more dribblers? Do you need more guys that are aggressive to take people on in the final third? Because there is some data that supports the fact that maybe the Dynamo just don't seem to have enough guys who want to run at people.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple, that do have that ability, but I think we need ones that are a little more consistent doing it. And I think a good example is when you have teams that play in a low block is you need guys that can unlock the defense themselves to a certain extent, not dribble through 10 guys and go, but when they do get isolated one-on-one, you need something to come from that. And I think the example this last weekend, we had numerous times where we one-on-one and we just couldn't make a play coming off of that piece. And I think the players that we're trying to target and try to look at is to give us something different where maybe that can break down a low block defense. But I would say in the weekend too, I think we're all disappointed. I think that was the massive game for us to be at home to try to get some momentum after a great gutty performance in San Jose. I wouldn't say necessarily the best game of the season, that's for sure, but a gutty performance to go kind of grind that out from 1-0 down on the road to get a 2-1 win. And then we just came out and there's no better way to say we kind of laid an egg. We just didn't play at the level that we're capable of. And I think it was frustrating for everybody, from the players, the staff, front office staff, the medical staff, everybody. It was a very, very disappointing result for us, and really realistically a performance. It's just not the level that we'd hoped for. And it's not from lack of trying. I know everybody in this club is for better phrase, trying their ass off. Is everybody wants to be successful here. But I think part of it is we don't know necessarily everybody knows how to be successful. So we've got to work on that and we've got to get better.
When you talk about that from last year, because a lot of these players are guys that suffered through a really rough season and rough seasons prior to that, no playoffs. Is that hard to revive somebody's mentality? And not because they don't want to, just because they've in a lot of ways been conditioned. I think a lot of us have been conditioned down here, and this is all before you came, but we have been conditioned to mediocrity. And I mean, I hate to be, but I want to be honest here in this.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this off air too, and I think we're. For lack of better, I don't know if you say it's complacency, because I don't think it's complacency. I don't think anyone here is like, oh, I'm really proud of where we're at, and I'm really proud of the history of this club in the last 8 years. I don't think there's anyone coming and saying that, and I don't think anyone's not trying their best. But I think it's the small details, and I'll go to use an example of watching our second team, who's in our club. They're part of our club, and we have players in there, and there's a team that's been very successful, but then you go watch their game and you watch a Brooklyn Reigns, who's, a young kid, 17-year-old, and he's developing, he's learning how to win games. So in the Minnesota game they played on Sunday, it's getting a little chippy and a little physical, and they're protecting a 1-0 lead. And there he is standing up to a guy who's 4 inches his height, probably 2 or 3 years his senior, and chirping away and protecting his group and realizing like, hey, this is going to take 30 seconds off the clock, and I'm going to drag this out, and I'm going to engage, even though it's probably not something I'm comfortable doing, but he's willing to do that because he knows in the end that's going to help get a result. And I think for us, a lot of our guys have seen that, but don't totally fully understand that that's what it takes. And you've got to do that for 90+ minutes to get results in this league.
Pat Onstad joining us, Dynamo general manager. It's good stuff here. Speaking of the next opponent, Philadelphia Union, when I look at their roster and I look at the young guys on that team, these are not novelty guys. These are not gimmickry. These are guys that at 18 and 19, they comfortably and confidently put in their lineup. Guys like Aronson, there's a number of them down there. I'm trying to think of the kid, McGlynn. These guys go in at 18 and 19, and they look like they belong. When do you think we reach that peak now? Is it with these Dynamo 2 guys? Is it a couple years
some of
down
them
the road?
possibly, like the example I use is the Brooklyn Reigns, who isn't necessarily our homegrown product, guy we actually just picked up. But, we have some guys in our group that we think can make that jump. But what I would say is and it took Philadelphia some time. Let's remember Jim Curtin's first few years in the league. I think there was always questions whether he was going to be able to hang in there. But what he did is he's developed a game model that he believed in that reflects who he is as a person, and developed that. And that took time. That wasn't like something where he just walked in, said, here's my game model, and within 3 months, that's what they were playing like. And I think that's where we're at as a club as well. Like Paulo and I have a game model that we would like to see implemented. I don't think we necessarily have the exact players that fit that system that we want to do, but it's something we're trying to get to, evolve to, not just with the players too, but with the coaches. And the coaches are trying to work on that and get their game model ironed out. And I think once you have that game model, and this goes back to your question, I will eventually answer your question, is that you've got these guys, these kids that now have grown up in the academy, seeing this system, whether they play it as strictly in the academy as they do in the first team. I do know they mimic it. I don't think it's completely black and white in terms of it's either this way or not, but they do mimic what they get there. And so when they make the jump, they fit into where they're maybe 2 of them are playing at a time, but you have 9 guys in the field that understand exactly what's going on, and all they have to do is do their role. So I think we need to, as a club, we need to get there where we have a distinct style of play and an identity where fans go, okay, that's the Dynamo. I just saw the Dynamo play. And I don't think we're there yet. Paul and I talked about this even just yesterday. It's something we're still working on and still evolving, but we've got to get there. And the sooner we can get there, then I think the easier it'll be to bring in these kids, these young guys, because they'll be able to see it and they'll understand it, and their rules will be easily defined.
Yeah, and I mean, the more we look at teams like I watched the Red Bull in Austin this past weekend, and to see these young guys and to know that they don't count a lot against the salary cap in their first couple of years with the club. I mean, this is like gold. It's like gold having these guys.
I agree 100%. And Red Bull's a great example. I mean, but they interesting. They scored 4 goals. They had they won 4-3. They had 80 passes completed in the game. I mean, usually we had 621 against Minnesota. So I mean, possession. Everyone talks about possession. That shows you, possession isn't everything. Yeah, I think Minnesota had 120 completed passes and beat us 2-1. But what I would say is, as much as I admire,
but you knew that going into the game, you knew what they were doing. You knew they didn't even want the ball.
Transition team, and
the Red Bulls didn't either. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, our transition defense was not great on Sunday, and I'm sure Austin would say, well, we're a build-up team, and we're a team that wants to make the field as big as possible, and they would say, you know what, we tried to play through them, and we made some major errors that cost them goals and cost them the game.
They were really uncomfortable the first 40 minutes until Driussi scores. I mean, who's a remarkable player. Now, so I just brought up Driussi's name too. And by the way, Philadelphia, the same thing. I know you guys all know this, but for everybody listening in, it's another team that if you go look at their data, there's nothing there that quantifies them to be an undefeated team at home except efficiency, collectiveness, and a lot of great attributes that they have. But the data doesn't always quantify things. And it's another one of those teams. And the Dynamo have really struggled to get the game's first goal against these types of teams. Like Minnesota, I'm going into that game. Me and Eddie are talking on the pregame show, and we're going, look, you got to get the first goal here to take the pressure off. It's tough when you don't. And then, of course, you're playing from behind 7 out of the last 9 games. That's tough.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I mean, we definitely need to start a lot better than we have. That's been frustrating. And I know, the coaching staff are frustrated as well, and so are the players. And again, I'll go always back to the effort piece. And I think, I think we've got right this year for the most part, not necessarily every game. And I'm sure individually, not for every single player all the time. But what I would say is I think we've got that piece right. But the end game of this is to win games. You've got to score goals, and you've got to beat opponents. And when you're at home, for me, if we don't make the playoffs this year, it's not because of our road record. It's not because of lack of effort. Could be a bit of identity in the way we play. Yeah, possibly. But I think for me, more than anything, is the way we play at home. Like we
20
just
points. Yeah.
we got 4-4-4 at home. That's just not good enough. That's not a playoff team in this league. It's a difficult to play in the road in this league, and we've done a reasonable job with 3 wins. Not fantastic, but a reasonable job. But our home record is what's going to cost us if we don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, 20 points left on the table. And I'm thinking of games in my mind right now that I know you guys were the better team and you didn't take the points. Portland jumps out right away. He's Pat Onstad, general manager of the Houston Dynamo. Tiago, were you hoping for more from him? Were you hoping for him to make a first team impact?
Yeah,
or was he going to be?
And yep, no, I think I'll go right into it. Sorry, cutting you off because
okay.
I think that's a great question. I think we were talking about that. Asher Mendelson and I, the technical director, were talking about this today, and that's a mistake. There's no doubt about it. In terms of our recruitment process, the way we went through it, we rushed through it a little bit too fast. We didn't get eyes on him live. There's a player we signed through film, then some great recommendations from people, but we didn't provide. I would also say we didn't provide a good environment for him to develop. We didn't give him the opportunity to develop. And ultimately, I think we failed in the whole process. I don't blame Tiago. Tiago's done everything he can to try to play at this level, but it's too big a step for him at this point. And I think part of it too is sometimes when you bring especially young kids, and so assuming the signing goes well in the next 24 hours, you have to make sure you provide an environment. So we've already discussed that. Like one of the issues we did is we need to make sure these kids have support. So we're going to bunk them in with another player. So on the first team, so that right away they have support, Spanish speaker, so that helps. There are things that we need to do better as a club. The player care coordinator, trying to get people settled into market. We need to do a better job as a club. So there's lots of things where we failed Tiago, and to a certain extent, the saving grace I think we have in that whole piece is that we also knew we were taking a risk, and we brought him in on loan. So we're not tied. It's not a 3-4 year deal where we're tied to him. But unfortunately for him, I'm highly unlikely he'll be back next year, and I think he understands that. So now, how do we help him to at least progress for the rest of the year without taking away opportunities for other guys that we feel that will be part of our group moving forward?
Now you have to feel pretty positive, though. You got an under 23 team, which has never been, a Dynamo 2 team, which has never been here. Yep. I always made the comment that, look, I don't know how you can be serious about player development until you got a reserve team in house. Everybody has their eyes on it. It's all contained. This is exciting. This is good stuff. I see Mateo Pineda, Brooklyn Reigns, Juan Castilla all got called into an under 19 camp. That's positive. Tell us a little bit about Pineda.
To be honest, he hasn't really pumped up with the second team, so I haven't seen a lot of him. I've seen him a couple of games with the 17s, with our 17s group. So most of my feedback here will be through Tony Vigil, who's kind of our, we call him a high performance director, but it's not high performance in terms of physical. He's more our pathway coach and takes time, but he's an interesting prospect. I think for him, he still has some steps to go till he's at the second team level. I think Juan and Brooklyn, for example, are guys that are more advanced and closer to the first team than Mateo is. But Mateo this year alone has really, in the last 6 months, has developed phenomenally, like to the point now where we're saying, okay, listen, this is a guy now we need to get in the second team, get some reps, get some looks at him, and see how he goes. So everyone develops at a different rate in different ways. And the nice thing is, as you mentioned, the 23s team gives us a pathway now to make that jump. They don't have to make the jump from the 17s to the professional team. Is such a big jump, and it gives guys games. And one with Juan Castillo is a great example of last year. He really lost a year of development. We weren't able to get him games. He's up here training with the first team, and he probably should have been out playing games with RGV, or preferably if we had the Houston Dynamo 2 team right here in market. So a kid like him who's lost a year of development, it's good to see him get back here and now start. And you could see actually in the first half the other day, I thought he had a good first half. Second half struggled a little bit, but the first half he's now getting a little more confident, starting to play forward. And to me, that's just the fact that he's got games under his belt.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I noticed he was always playing everything lateral and safe. And I know you guys want him to play more progressive line breaking passes.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 quick questions and we're going to end it here real quick. Just the rest of the season, how do we look at it? you got to take literally, you got to take like 25 points out of 36. That's a tall order in Major League Soccer for anybody. How do you look at the rest of the season? Does there become a development side of it in your mind? How do you look at it?
I don't think you, in our league, you never say there's development side until you're mathematically eliminated. Then I think at that stage you reevaluate, you sit down, you have meetings, and you go through what you want to do and what your plan is moving forward. But at this point now, it's about trying to figure out how do we get 3 points in Philadelphia. As you mentioned earlier, probably the hardest place in the league to play right now, and one of the top teams in the league. But for us, we're going to go in and try to get 3 points. And the nice thing is, if you beat a team like Philadelphia, we are a strange group. But that will give our group a massive boost. And for us, it's about trying to get some momentum here. You're right about it's a difficult task. Can we get 24, 25 points in the last, 36 points? It's going to be very difficult. But I think for us, we've got to believe until we are told we can't. So we're going to keep trying to push forward. And for me, it would be nice to see us get some momentum and get on a bit of a string of wins, even if we don't end up making the playoffs, which, it's going to break my heart. And I think a lot of guys in the locker room is going to be devastating for, but I think we haven't really had a good run outside of the very beginning of the season. And it'd be nice for us if we could string together a 4, 5, 6 game undefeated streak, even if it's, 3 wins and 3 draws, just for us to get some confidence and realize like these are the moments. That's the way you get into the playoffs in our league is you have a 3-game, you play 3 in 8 days and you pick up 7, 9 points. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you race up the ladder. And those are the moments we haven't achieved so far this year. And hopefully we can here in the last 12 games.
Dynamo GM Pat Onstad. And by the way, that is an opportunity to be the first team to walk into Philadelphia and get a win. There's some incentive right there. Yep. Last one, Hector Herrera, any feedback from him? It's been a hectic 2 weeks for him or however long he's been here. I mean, he's really done it on and off the field. What about some feedback from him?
Yeah, he's been fantastic. I think he's been probably more than we expected. His leadership in the locker room has been excellent. He wants to win. So that part, I think for him has been very difficult. I think we're 1-2-1 with him in the lineup. And he's been a little frustrated, I think, at times. But at the same token, you still see him on the field coaching and helping guys along and telling them where to be. I know for a fact he's really happy with the 3 guys in midfield. I know with Coco beside him and Mateo protecting him, Matty protecting him. I think we've got a good 3. That's a pretty darn good 3. And I challenge you to find a better 3 in the league. There's not a lot. So I think that part's been great, but around them, we've got to get better and we've got to produce on the field. I mean, ultimately, again, it comes down to wins. Our goal is still to make the playoffs, but it's going to be a difficult trek here moving forward.
Pat, as always, thank you very much. Thanks for the candid nature of the conversation, the transparency, and I am sure the fan base appreciates it immensely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me on.
It's always great stuff. That's Pat Onstad there. And that's a lot of great information there. If you're a Dynamo fan, you just got a ton of great information straight from the source of the general manager and the head man. All right. We'll take a break here.